everyone, and welcome to Reimagine, the virtual blockchain conference, coming at you with our 11th event with some really exciting content. We're on the road, we're on tour, we are getting back in person with some high quality interviews with people both in person but also virtually, like today, reporting back on what's going on in San Francisco, New York, El Salvador, as well as some of the biggest developments in NFTs and DAOs. I'm your co-host, Ashlie Meredith, and today I'm pleased to introduce our third time returning guest, Paul Puey, the CEO and co-founder of The Edge. How are you doing today, Paul?
Doing great. Thanks so much for having me. Look forward to this chat. Glad we're back on for the third time in a row. Lots of exciting stuff to talk about. The whole industry, just as people have said, crypto's like dog years. Just a few months, it feels like we've advanced a few years already as far as changes and trends and new advances in the cryptocurrency space. So I think lots to talk about.
Absolutely. And for anyone who is just tuning in, be sure to check out Paul's other interviews on our YouTube channel. Head on over to YouTube, Reimagine 2021, smash that subscribe button, and check out all the great content we have there. So this event, we're kind of doing a mix and match themes of different things that are going on in crypto right now, but it just seems like this digital takeover is happening. Crypto unchained, like we've got Bitcoin being legal tender in El Salvador. Corporations are converting into decentralized autonomous organizations, and the NFT craze shows no signs of slowing down. Had an NFT sell for $500 million today. I think that people are accepting that the future of finance, art, culture, collaboration is going to be digital. So really excited to talk about all of those developments. But before we dive into all of that, just want to give our viewers a chance to get to know you a little better if they haven't seen any of the other interviews, but you can always go back and dive in there, and a quick update on how Edge is doing and what we can expect in the next quarter or for 2022 from Edge.
Got it. So my name is Paul Puey. I'm CEO and co-founder of Edge. Our company's been around for about 8 years, although originally called Airbits with a focus on payments with Bitcoin. Originally had a merchant directory and a wallet with Bluetooth and NFC payments, as well as good old-fashioned scanning of QR codes. Although we pivoted in 2018 and rebranded and rebuilt our entire technology around Edge, and Edge being now a self-custody exchange. You could say that people have heard the terminology like Bitcoin maximalist and whatnot. I'm definitely not a Bitcoin maximalist or a maximalist of almost anything. Although I would say I'm probably a self-custody maximalist. I really want people to be able to hold their own funds, control their own privacy, control their destiny. Really, that was what Bitcoin was built for. That's what cryptocurrencies expand on. But unless we do that, we've really lost all of the core benefit of this revolutionary technology, and it wouldn't be interesting in the grand scheme of what this can truly enable. So Edge right now, self-custody exchange, people can buy, sell, and trade various digital currencies, all while still holding and controlling their own funds, whether you're onboarding from fiat or exchanging crypto to crypto. With respect to what's exciting, what we're doing at Edge, and what you can expect in the near future. Edge, first of all, what notably differentiates us from many other apps is the self-custody is incredibly easy. You never see 12 or 24 words that you have to write down and put it somewhere safe, but make sure no one sees it. You just create an account and log in. Lose your phone, download Edge on a new one, log in. 2 factors, click of a button, you're already done with 2 factors, it's automatically protected, and even has password recovery capability, which is non-existent. If you lose your key, you just simply lose it. Edge, much more user-friendly. We factor the human into the security model. Upcoming stuff for 2022, DeFi. I'm really, really excited about DeFi, and you're going to see much more tight integration of DeFi protocols across multiple different chains directly inside Edge, which will drastically help with the usability of DeFi. Right now, DeFi has been what I call kind of at the proof of concept early stage. Make sure people actually demand some of these financial services that are getting built. Clearly, people do demand it. They really want to use these services, and a lot of them replace CeFi. They replace these centralized services that fully control your money. And with that, though, we simply need to make the interface very similar to CeFi. And that's what I'm excited to really start building out and launching into the public, which I think will be the next big step in true adoption of these DeFi protocols outside of just the tinkerers and hobbyists that currently utilize these services. So excited about that. That's what I'm hoping people will give us some great feedback on once we launch.
Absolutely. And with all of this technology, right? It kind of starts with the tinkerers and developers, and
Mhm.
the easier we make these tools to use, the more adoption there will be. So I want to go back for a second, just for people who might be tuning in for the first time. I think a lot of people are coming into the space with this NFT stuff, maybe watching some videos like this for the first time. I know that I have family members who are finally asking me about this stuff, and downloaded a wallet, wrote down their seed phrase, or took a screenshot of it and saved it in their phone. And I was like, no, don't do that.
Best idea. Nope.
So can you explain for anyone just tuning in why self-custody is so important, what that actually means, and
Yeah.
how it kind of usually works, and why Edge is such a probably maybe in your mind a better way to do it?
Yeah, so self-custody means that you, yourself, your individual person or company, whatever entity, holds their own assets. And from the viewpoint of history and assets and money, really, you as an individual person, ask yourself if you've ever actually held your own digital form of asset. You may have held your own bars of gold, you may have held your own coins, your own cash, but you've never actually held digital value yourself, right? If it was digital, such as a digital dollar in a bank account, your bank accounts are digital, right? Cryptocurrencies aren't unique because they're digital. Don't call them digital currencies because all currencies are digital already. But what's unique about cryptocurrency, and this is the first time we've ever done this, it's the first time that people can actually hold digital value themselves. No counterparty, no bank, no Visa, no MasterCard, no PayPal, no Venmo. You yourself on your own device can hold money. And you do that by holding a string of random letters and numbers, which are called a private key. But that's a little scary to many people. This is a string of data. Whenever in the history of your life have you held a string of data that if you lost, you would lose money? Or a string of data that if someone else saw, they could take your money? This is the first time ever. So that is a challenging thing, and it alienates a lot of people. So hence they just leave it with a bank. However, you ask like, well, why is it important to self-custody? Unless you self-custody, you lose all the benefits that cryptocurrency and Bitcoin were built for. Number one, being able to transact with anyone in the world. All you need is an internet connection and an internet connected device. As soon as you put funds in a bank, whether it be a dollar bank, Chase, JP Morgan, Wells Fargo, or a crypto bank, Kraken, Coinbase, Gemini, you put it with them, they will not allow you to transact anywhere in the world. They will put restrictions, they will censor transactions, whether they be outgoing or incoming. That is the core benefit. That's easily the single most important benefit of cryptocurrency. That's what got people excited about it. And if everything goes the path of non-self-custody, of custodial ownership, then we lose that. So that's a very core important part of it. And there's a few other nuanced reasons, like such as the utility of cryptocurrency. People can't reliably send their funds and interact with DeFi protocols from centralized custodians, primarily because of regulation. A rule is coming down, a global rule, what's called the fat of travel rule, which is applied to banks today, is going to get applied to crypto banks, right? Custodians, whether they be exchanges or custodial wallets, which says that in order to transact and send your money to another party, you have to KYC, which is know your customer, and have the personal information of the sender sent to the recipient, and you have to know the information of the recipient. Crypto turns that upside down. You can send money to a string of random letters and numbers. So how do you actually KYC that? You can only do it when a custodian sends to another custodian, which limits so much of your transactional capability. How do you interact with a DeFi contract, which has no custodian? There's no KYC, there's no personal information with a DeFi contract. So utility is probably the second piece, is being able to actually use your cryptocurrency reliably is a piece that really dies with custodian. So that's a nugget. It's an entire presentation. We could take up 30, 40 minutes on the value of self-custody, but that's a nugget that I think people should understand and realize and try to uphold. Now, what we do in Edge to make that easier, and because what it looks like right now is challenging, writing down about 12 to 24 random words is what it looks like for by and large 90 plus 99% of the different self-custody apps, whether it be hardware, software, a piece of paper, USB stick, you name it. And many people are really challenged by the two sides of the brain. One side says, keep this thing in mind, but at the other side, somehow prevent someone else from seeing it, right? That's what you're asked to do. And those really challenge both both halves of your brain. Have you ever heard the term out of sight, out of mind?
Oh yeah.
Right. And so if it's out of sight, it's going to be out of mind. You really can't do the two. It's very hard. A cryptocurrency private key, you need to keep out of sight. You can't let anybody else see it. Someone else sees it, your money's gone. But you have to keep it in mind, because if you lose it, then very likely you lose your money. That is your backup, right? And so you need to have your backup in a reliable place, because you will need to access it. So that's where a lot of money has been lost, in self-custody. Someone else sees the key, or simply you lose the key. So with Edge, you don't have to write that down. We make something that's more familiar. People are used to creating accounts on websites and logging in. That's what you do in Edge. Simply create an account, normal login credentials, username, password, PIN, biometric, and log in. You lose your phone, you log in on another device. You can even set up password recovery if you forget your password, which is something that people frequently do. And you're protected with two-factor, something you can't do with a key. If someone sees your key, you can't just suddenly have two-factor on it and prevent them from taking your money. If you were to take a screenshot of your password, you said, oh gosh, that's probably not a good idea with the private key. But if you took a screenshot of your password and somehow that got put as a backup on a server and someone else found it, you're actually still protected, because you have two-factor enabled automatically, or a form of it. We call it IP validation. So all of these come together, the password recoverability, the two-factor capability, and not having to deal with this really scary 12 to 24 words, comes together to really provide a self-custody solution that feels very natural to the average user that has used just at least a mobile device before and has created a cloud-based account. All while you control your funds, you control your privacy. No one at Edge knows how much money you're holding in your account, cannot transact and move your money, doesn't even know your public keys. Clearly not your private keys, otherwise we'd be custodian. We don't see private keys, but we don't even see the public addresses and public keys. We believe very strongly in privacy, and we want to give that to people, even though it feels like a traditional financial app bank.
Absolutely. Well, love what you guys are doing. I think it goes beyond the whole, what I generally kind of explain to people is, with this greater freedom to transact comes a greater responsibility to, and it's a new thing. Like, if it's this important and it's this different of a way of doing things, but it's important enough to do it, even though it's difficult, but we can go a step forward from that, right? And say,
Right.
no, people can be responsible, but we don't have to make it that hard for them. So love that. We'll have to check out that product and recommend it to all the newbie friends who are coming into the space, finally asking me for crypto advice. So the other thing that you brought up was things to look forward to from Edge, and it kind of goes in line with the trends in crypto these days, DeFi. Anything specific that you have tested out already, or that's already live, or what can users expect as far as DeFi offerings from Edge?
From Edge, we do have decentralized exchange capability, although one of the partners that we had integrated in Edge recently had to shut down. They were a DeFi aggregator, but we are integrating, or a DEX aggregator. They aggregate decentralized exchanges on the Ethereum protocol. So we are integrating those protocols directly into Edge. So people will be able to access Ethereum and the various tokens on Ethereum directly and with no counterparty. Once again, censorship resistant anywhere in the world. You don't have to provide personal information. You'll be able to do that pretty soon in Edge. But then more so, what I'm really excited about is also the ability to transact across chain using DeFi, using decentralized exchanges. You can go from Bitcoin to Ethereum, Bitcoin to Ethereum tokens to Dogecoin, Litecoin, and whatnot, using the wave of new decentralized exchanges that are cross-chain. This is a fairly new development in the cryptocurrency industry. Before, DEXs were only on a single chain. But with the advent of such projects such as Chainflip and Thorchain, we now can do cross-chain exchanges as well. I'm very excited about that. And that'll be coming to Edge in the near future. So that, and then as well, as I'd mentioned, I'm excited about the more tighter integration of things like borrowing. So borrowing is a really hot product in the just financial services space. No, it's not just DeFi, it's not just crypto, it's in just a financial service. How many people just need to borrow money? And one of the unique things about crypto is crypto as an asset is a great asset to collateralize a loan. A lot of people don't realize that when you collateralize a loan with crypto, it's not very different from collateralizing a home loan with a house, right? Your house is collateral, and you're taking out a loan that's some subset of the value of your house, typically like 80%, right? If your House is worth $1 million. You're taking out, say, an $800,000 loan, but the house is the collateral. But guess how long it takes to fill out the paperwork for that loan? Any one of your listeners and watchers of this video have ever purchased a home and taken a loan out for it? It's hours and hours and hours and signatures on documents about an inch thick, maybe half an inch. I'm exaggerating, but probably like half an inch thick. DeFi allows you to collateralize a loan, not with a house, but with cryptocurrency, and not provide any information. There's no signatures other than digital signatures, which your wallet does for you. So allowing people to borrow from DeFi protocols such as Aave, Sovereign on Bitcoin are really key products that clearly there's big demand, and it replaces a lot of CeFi companies that exist in our world, not traditional banks, but a lot of Bitcoin crypto companies that launched and did very well. It replaces them almost completely with better terms, less application, more global accessibility. We just need to tie it all together and give a much smoother user interface, as I mentioned earlier in the interview. And that's one of the big initiatives that we're building over the next couple of quarters.
Well, that's super exciting. We'll be keeping our eyes peeled for all of those updates. So moving on to some of the big developments that have been happening. Our last event was around August. Since that time, El Salvador made Bitcoin legal tender. What do you think about that decision?
Just like you'll probably hear a lot in the news, I have very, very mixed feelings about it. On one side, it's amazing to hear that a government, an actual government, a state actor, is giving Bitcoin so much legitimacy, so much so that they're even buying it on a regular basis and announcing it on Twitter that they've bought X hundred Bitcoin at various times, buying the dip. They've got all of the nomenclature and all the jargon down. Like clearly they're in the industry. They're not just, oh, this Bitcoin thing. Okay, sure, fine, for sure. No, they're in the community. So that really excites me. And the fact that they're open to businesses and services and actually government services accepting Bitcoin, paying people in Bitcoin, awesome. I'm not a fan of the mandate. I'm not a fan of almost any mandate, whether it be the mandates due to COVID or mandating that someone accept payment in a specific currency, like absolutely mandating that across the board, I think that should be the choice of each business, right? Each business should choose, okay, I want to pay people in some currency. I want to accept various assets, whether it be, heck, accept gold coins if you want. But I think it should be their choice. And you come to a mutual agreement between your customer and the business. That I think is what government should do. Mandating it and requiring it, that to me is kind of against the ideals of Bitcoin and cryptocurrency. And yes, ideals are one thing, but a lot of companies succeed against the ideals of a lot of their customers. However, I think it also could have negative backlash, which we've seen it has had. When you mandate something, you might get people that oppose it, that if you didn't mandate, they might be more open to it. Really, you want people diving into a technology or to an industry or just some type of behavior that they want to do versus you force them to do it. Just think about how you raise kids. When you force them to do something, they'll usually want to go reverse. And that's why reverse psychology is so effective, with kids. I have two kids and it blows my mind how effective reverse psychology is. And so if they're just surrounded by other people and businesses, these businesses in El Salvador, if they're surrounded by other businesses that are accepting Bitcoin, and they see that they're actually making business in Bitcoin, and these travelers that are coming into El Salvador, such as people with your company doing these interviews and doing the conference with Reimagine, and myself, I'll be over there next month as well, and I'm going to look for merchants where I can pay with Bitcoin, and they just get jealous of it. How much better is that than trying to mandate, no, you must accept Bitcoin? And so that's kind of the mixed bag feelings that I have, and I'm hoping that other countries do sort of fall in line with El Salvador, but tweak that a little bit and make it, maybe the definition of legal tender needs to be tweaked for the next country that does this, and say it's legal tender, meaning you are definitively allowed to accept it and you can pay people in it, but you're not mandated to accept it as debt, legal for anything that someone might owe you for. So that's my take on it. I know I'm not the only one that feels that way, but there are other people, especially the people that will cheer Bitcoin for anything, just want any positive news, will think that it's 100% positive. But I definitely think that there is a different side to that.
Yeah, I think they've been doing some polls in El Salvador, and up to 70% of people are against the idea of mandating it. I think definitely, I mean, businesses in the US can decide whether or not to accept cash or not anymore, which I have a problem with, just because we haven't solved the problem of making sure everyone has bank accounts and debit cards, but
Right.
but you
Exactly.
are able to make that choice. So definitely would probably go over better if the people didn't feel like there was some authority just forcing things on them.
Exactly.
But how do you see uh other world leaders doing it? You said something about them being kind of in the culture and really part of the industry, instead of just maybe trying to diversify their portfolios, or I
Right.
guess this Bitcoin thing is a thing, we're going to buy into it.
Other countries, I know that there was an announcement, I think by Brazil, that they were already heading down the path of trying to adopt Bitcoin. That actually really shocked me because unlike El Salvador, Brazil has its own currency, the real, which they can print, to their own liking. And Brazil has gone through uh, hyperinflation in the past. So the people there have experienced it, but usually relinquishing control to a currency that you have no control over, like you cannot print that currency, you can't put monetary policy on it, um, is something that most people have not expected. They always thought it would come from the smallest countries, the ones that couldn't have their money and they couldn't control their own money, that relied on another government. And that made most sense in the sense that, hey, if I have to rely on some other country and how they want to print the dollar, well, why not I rely on no country and simply use Bitcoin? So, um, in a way, it was a positive surprise, which means that Bitcoin to them is much more powerful and much, much clearer of the future of economy and finance than just simply, hey, I want to move power from this other country that I don't necessarily like to an independent entity, which is Bitcoin, very, very independent of any nation state. Whether or not they're going to dive in and be part of the community and attend conferences and hop on podcasts like Peter McCormick's, what Bitcoin did. Hard to say. I don't know. I don't know the global leaders of some of these countries, but it wouldn't be too surprising if they did. In a way, the community is fun. We've got a lot of cool, fun memes, and we've turned finance and made it fun again and made it entertaining. That's a piece that I think it kind of lacked for years. Some of these fintech startups like Venmo kind of creeped into that, but they were so restrictive. You couldn't get the same personalities, the youth, the vibrancy that we have in the crypto community. Sometimes the jokes that turn into billion-dollar projects like Doge and now SHIB. Oh my gosh. So it definitely can appeal, especially with some of the younger leaders. And President El Salvador definitely on the younger side compared to what you see in the U.S., or we've got one of the more ancient global leaders on Earth. So I think it will really depend on age, mentality, personality of these leaders, but it's not above and beyond to see them actually engage with the community, come to conferences, talk with a lot of the people in the space. So I'm excited to see that, but hard to have a prediction.
Absolutely. And what do you think is is there the main economic benefit for regions like this adopting Bitcoin, outside of obviously having a deflation, a non-inflationary
Right.
currency to combat the one that potentially they currently have, a hedge against inflation? Is it the crypto money moving in there because of places like Puerto Rico where you can escape capital gains taxes? Just kind of the novelty of it and the crypto culture itself kind of moving into these places, or is it an easier way for people to transact? Is it the price of Bitcoin rising? The merchants who are accepting Bitcoin can maybe hold on to some.
So multifolded. I think the first one, which very much like back in the days of 2014 and 2015, when merchant adoption of Bitcoin was heavily promoted, I think the first few, maybe the first half a dozen countries to announce that they are making Bitcoin or other cryptocurrencies, I don't call it legal tender because that implies forcing, but incorporating into the government structure, paying people with it, accepting it for government services. The first few countries to do that and make it very official. It's one of the official currencies of the country, whether you call it legal tender or not. That has simply a PR effect. Right? Just like these merchants, when they first took Bitcoin, you got this PR effect, and like they say, all news is good news. You get written up about, people travel to the country just to see what's going on. Your global leaders get interviewed on major news publications. You just get seen. That helps drive the economy one way or another, right? You will definitely have more interest in your economy just from the press about that. And then second of all, just simply the realization that if you do accept and promote Bitcoin cryptocurrency as a valid currency within the community, then you are helping drive just general economic value to your citizens. If they say, oh my God, my government is actually recommending this, well, maybe I accept Bitcoin. Oh, I accept Bitcoin. Maybe I didn't sell it. Oh man, it went up in value. Like that little bit of Bitcoin that had went up in value. And now you just simply have a wealthier country. You have wealthier citizens. And not that I'm a fan of taxes, but wealthier citizens means a wealthier government from tax collection. And a lot of these smaller countries, a vast majority of their commerce is in cash. So it's not a big jump to go into Bitcoin, right? It's tough to collect taxes on cash. It's actually easier to collect taxes on Bitcoin, right? It's a bit
Right.
more, it's a little bit more trackable. Clearly not as easy as when people pay with credit card and wire transfer, but definitely still feasible relative to cash. So many different effects, everything from what I said, PR to just wealth preservation and acceleration for citizens of that country, as well as wealth for the country itself. Um, and then just simply people traveling, all the Bitcoiners in the world that just want a cool place to be able to spend their Bitcoin and be able to say it and take a selfie. Hey, I bought a surfing lesson with Bitcoin. All of that just drives more visibility and wealth to your country. It's a no-brainer. Just do it, everyone. But probably only the first few are going to get that true benefit. After
Right.
the first
Early
half a dozen or a
adopters.
dozen, the early adopters, everyone else, you start to become a me too, right? After like
Mhm.
12 or so countries, it's like, oh, and there's another one. They're just hopping on the bandwagon in the train. And then afterwards, the last few dozen aren't going to have any news about it. If anything, you're going to have news written about how you didn't adopt Bitcoin and you were the last movers, and it'll be all negative news. And a lot of the value would have already been transferred. You will already have seen a big value transfer out of your country into the other ones that are adopting cryptocurrency. So where that transition happens, is it the first dozen versus the last dozen? Hard to say, but definitely the early adopters will have the most to benefit, both from a PR point of view and a wealth transfer point of view.
Awesome. Absolutely. So other big news going on in crypto these days, corporations becoming DAOs, NFTs selling for hundreds of millions of dollars. How much have you been following all of that? What do you think of decentralized autonomous organizations? What are they best used for? And maybe what are some drawbacks to them?
Yeah, so I have been following the DAO story and the definition and how it can be used since as early as probably like 2015, when Ethereum first started popping up and people talked about the potential of DAOs in our future. And I have, once again, kind of like the mandate of legal tender in El Salvador. I have mixed feelings about DAOs. I think there is some use case for them, but I think the idea of taking a mid to large size corporation and turning it into a DAO has far more drawbacks than benefits. So realize that most of the DAO structure that are being proposed is simply taking the funds of a company and putting it in what effectively is a gigantic multi-sig, right? A big pool of money that the token holders of a DAO effectively become shareholders of a company. And the token holders are the ones that can vote on how the funds move, which would equate to how you pay people and how you pay bills. So for one, paying people, if someone wants to work for a DAO, they pretty much have to accept that they are going to be paid in the cryptocurrency of that DAO or some fund that the DAO can hold. So a DAO can hold funds in a smart contract. Those funds can be USDC, which by and large, you pay dollar-based funds to someone. It could be ETH or it could be the token of that DAO. Now, think about how traditional companies work. Is that how traditional companies work, where a company has a big bank account and they pay people through it, which that they do. But do the token holders vote on that? You have a whole bunch of people with these coins that they vote to say, oh, go pay your janitor this much each month. Like they unlock the funds to pay a janitor. You see them voting to pay a certain developer every month. This is where you present some challenges. Is the distribution of funds in a medium to large company generally goes through a hierarchy, and you allocate a budget to various departments, and that starts to garner an incredibly complex smart contract. So I had known that I'd from some talks, for example, with the Shapeshift team, right? And this is a company, it's a traditional company based out of Switzerland with a lot of their team in Denver, and that they're transitioning to a DAO by the first of next year of 2022. And even they have admitted there are some drawbacks and there are some things they have not figured out yet, such as what happens if you need to pay, like most companies, you need to pay for goods and services that do not accept cryptocurrency in any way, shape, or form. Now you're actually having to trust an intermediary, a staff member, to accept payment and then relay that payment in fiat to a service, like with a credit card. So now you're having to use personal funds to make business transactions. And now that individual is at risk of what happens to those funds or the items that they've purchased. Are they the owner of those items, or is the DAO the owner of those items? And how do you even own items that are physical? If you have a company that has a DAO and it may need to purchase computers, or you name it, anything physical, how do you physically hold that? How do you own that? There's no entity, there's no actual corporate entity that can own those physical goods. So there's severe limitations from the viewpoint of ownership as soon as you venture outside of blockchain assets. How do you make the payments? I mentioned that. That's an issue as well. And then how do you delegate the payments? Who is the one that has to make the payments? As a person that does work in a company, I don't want to make all the decisions. What is the number one thing you hear as a founder, and especially in growth, is you want to hire good people and then delegate. You don't want to micromanage. The typical DAO structure of a token holders making votes on who to pay is kind of the epitome of micromanaging. It's not even micromanaging at the CEO level, it's micromanaging at the token holder or the shareholder level. And so creating that structure that has a level of delegation to alleviate a lot of the inefficiencies makes for an insanely complex smart contract, if even one that's possible at all. And with complexity of smart contracts comes risk of bugs, and realize that, real legal contracts can have bugs, right? Where you think it says one thing and oop, shoot, another. Difference is with legal contracts, you can catch them and simply say, oh, that's not what we meant. We're not actually going to send that money because that was we wrote something wrong in the legal contract, and it can be agreed upon. Whereas with smart contracts, they do exactly what they're told, and they're very autonomous. Very difficult to change, if able to change at all. So I think this is one of the core challenges. It's really hard to mirror the entire structure of a medium to large size company, how funds flow within that company, who has ownership of various assets within that company, and how the transfer of those assets happen, and then how do you acquire goods and services that aren't on the blockchain. All of those are huge drawbacks, and as well, um, without a corporate structure, it's hard to have what I'll kind of venture to say is, just a physical presence. And I know the world has definitely changed with COVID and so many jobs going virtual. But I think this, there's a silent majority, I fundamentally believe, that actually enjoy interacting physically with workers. But it's near impossible to have a physical space that a DAO would pay for, where people
Mm.
could come and collaborate. Right? If you don't want to be that person, want to work virtual, live anywhere you want in the world, and just be on Zoom calls all day, then great. Maybe you can work for a DAO. If you want to actually collaborate with people, and I do enjoy physically meeting and interacting with our teammates. We are 100%, Edge is 100% here in San Diego. We do a bit of a hybrid model, but we're in the office a lot. And that work style is just about impossible with a DAO. So there's no entity that can then actually manage the facility. Right? It's individual people. So all these might be resolved, but I don't see the light at the end of the tunnel yet. Doesn't mean it can't happen. I'm really excited to actually see some companies try this. I don't want to be at the forefront of that. It's too bleeding edge for me even. So, but I'm glad to see, Eric Voorhees and Shapeshift give it a try, because it's an exciting adventure, and I want to see how it goes. But for me, and I think for a lot of people, there's a lot of drawbacks to be seen versus the benefits.
Absolutely. Yeah, I can totally see why he is the kind of person who would go for something like that, started his career in Bitcoin writing a political philosophy blog. And like, I also studied political philosophy at the graduate level. So I'm fascinated by governance and how do we create incentives for collaboration and disincentivize bad actors. And these are questions we've been asking since like the beginning of time. So
Yeah.
they don't have hard and fast rules. So it's really
Nope.
interesting for me to see different DAOs and how they think about governance and what kinds of things they want people to decide on and what their aims are and what kinds of projects best lend themselves to that kind of collaborative decision making. So I think we still have a ways to go to watch all of that shake out. But yeah, it's awesome to watch and see these experiments come out.
Yep, absolutely. So excited to see it. We'll see how things pan out. And you mentioned, like, are there projects that could work well with a DAO? And I think it's less about the term DAO, like decentralized autonomous organization. I think there's a there's a thin line in the sand between a DAO and just multi-sig, right? DAO is gradually getting a more complex version of multi-sig. And I do think that multi-sig cryptocurrency does have a place, and you can make that more complex. That starts to feel like a DAO. So I would say a case in point example, and I've made presentations that educate people on blockchain technology for this. The good example would be, for example, an HOA, right? An HOA, being an organization, it's still an actual entity. It has, it's registered with the government as an entity, but you could use an HOA to hold funds. Sorry, you could use a DAO or a giant multi-sig to hold funds, which HOA members can vote on to move those funds to a trusted entity that which could pay bills. So a smaller form of this, where you don't have such a large contract with a lot of complexity that could have bugs, smaller version of this, which is effectively a multi-sig, could be useful. I know a lot of cryptocurrency meetups that don't want to have to go through the trouble of opening a bank account, but have several organizers that effectively have a multi-sig wallet. Is that a DAO? Right? It's kind of like I'm taking the extreme simplest version of the definition of a DAO. And heck, do you call that a DAO or not? If you call it a DAO at the simple level, it actually does work. It's still an organization. It's a meetup group. It's an organization, right? It's decentralized, at least in the ownership of its funds, autonomous in that regards. It just doesn't have to be a company. It's not replacing a company, but it gets a lot of the functionality that you need without having to have a bank account. And that, to me, is kind of the interesting thing. Let's replace some centralized entity that the organization itself is dependent on, and replace it with cryptocurrency solution, even if the organization stays the same as it normally would. So I think there are some small use cases that might be better test beds, smaller entities, before you go to something as large as a couple 100-person company.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Paul. Fascinating conversation about some of the biggest news in crypto right now, right? The situation in El Salvador is still ongoing. DAOs I think are starting to become more and more popular. And of course, NFTs, DeFi, all of that. Where can people find you if they want to learn more about Edge, and who are you most looking to talk to?
So to find us, very simple, edge.app. You can find us. That's our website. And unlike many companies in our industry in the tech space, it is actually spelled Edge. So edge.app. You can go there on your browser and find pretty much links to our Twitter. You can find links to my LinkedIn, my Twitter handle. If you want to follow me on Twitter, Paul at Paulinator, PAULLINATOR, or at Edge Wallet if you want to follow the company. And I am most looking forward to really interfacing with the users and getting their feedback and hearing what they want to see. We get feedback in all different directions. Like, there's no way we can incorporate all the feedback and build all of the features that people want. But by people chiming in, we hear and get a better idea of what we should prioritize. So definitely reach out, let us know, hit us up at edge.app. You get links to our support group, our email address, send us some feedback, issues, concerns. Or of course, pats on the back. We love those too. So thanks to everyone. And yeah, let us know what you think.
Thanks. And for everyone just tuning in, this is Reimagine Virtual Blockchain Conference Series. We've been talking to Paul Puey, CEO and co-founder of Edge, the blockchain wallet and security platform. Stay tuned for more interviews and head on over to YouTube in case you missed any. Thanks, everybody.